Now presenting Minutes with Michael, with your host, Michael. Hello again. It's now a little bit later, several hours later, from the first time I posted the Minutes with Michael from this morning. This morning, we talked about a particular trilemma, and my brother mentioned another dilemma called the, Youth Pro dilemma. I butchered that one. And that dilemma is essentially boiled down in modern terms to, is something good because God wills it, or does God will it because it's good? So let's examine this dilemma. You say, that's not a big deal. Well, if you look at it deep enough with a philosophical mindset, it is. You say, what determines good? What makes God good? Is it good just because God said it? And when God said something, then it arbitrarily becomes good? So he's the maker of good? Or does God choose to do certain things that are already characterized as good? The answer is none of the above. The answer is, I find, God is good. Therefore, whatever springs from him is good. Whatever acts contrary to his character is bad. So is bad and good and abstract? Are they mixed up? Well, abstract meaning that you can't see it, sure. But think of it like this. What is darkness? Darkness is simply the absence of light. Light we can see and measure, it acts funny, it can act like a particle and a wave, but at least we can measure light. Darkness is just the absence of light. So what is evil? The absence of good. So when we say, well, does God do things because they're good, or are they good because God doesn't? No, God is good, and everything he does is good. Everything he decrees is good, which is interesting because people want to throw God under the bus for things like the virus, or the Canaanite conquest when Joshua and even Moses had, King Saul go slaughter the Amalekites. I mean, you're looking at men, women, children, and a lot of folks have tried to rationalize around it and say, well, God's not really that bad. He didn't really mean it. And there's a possibility that some ancient Near East idiomatic language was used, but in reality, God said what he said, and he meant what he said. And the people were supposed to do what he said for them to do. So on what standard can we judge God? We can say, God, that wasn't right. We don't do sort of things. We don't do that sort of thing. Well, no, I don't believe that we can do that because God is the standard setter. He's the moral lawgiver. And everything he does acts in accordance with himself. And whatever he does is good. Whatever he declares is good. And the standards he sets are good. So instead of saying, well, what makes God's actions good? God. And because he always acts within the confines of his character, everything he does is good. Anyways, let's check on that tree that I planted. I don't even know if here it is. Well, you'll note that it didn't grow at all. You say, were you expecting something else? I say, were you? No, nobody with any sense would say, I expected that acorn to grow to a mighty tree in a few hours. Yeah. So then why do we expect the same of ourselves and others? I mean, many of you saw this coming. Oh, pretty cool point, man. No, but for real. I'll just start with others. A lot of times we throw other people under the bus because they aren't quite like us, or they don't have the same preferences or standards that we have. One, that could just be they're exercising their individual liberty. That's fine with them. Two, it could be that, they haven't come to the same conclusions you have, and they might one day. Give them time to grow. And then with you, I think we're our own worst critics, especially if we have the right worldview. The wrong worldview makes ourselves gods. The right worldview helps us understand who we really are, but sometimes we can take that to an extreme and be too critical of ourselves. Listen, Jesus died because humanity fails. We fail all the time. The human story is a story of failure, and the Bible captures that story really well. The human story shows that even the most promised and promising people failed time and again. Everybody was kind of expecting Moses to be the Messiah. No. Well, what about David? No. Jehoshaphat, Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel? Nope. Okay, well, what about King Josiah? Nope. John the Baptist. Wasn't ever. Everybody who was supposed to be a deliverer failed. Everybody who was, on the radar to be the Messiah failed. And that's why Jesus came and why he went to the wilderness wanderings himself. 40 days in the wilderness, right? Israel, 40 years in the wilderness. Because he needed to pass the test where humanity failed. And because he passed the test, that's not him saying you don't have to. It's him saying you can now because I have. And you can pass tests in my power. But if you feel like a failure and you feel like you're not where you should be, maybe that's a good place to start. Don't be too hard on yourself. Say, okay, as a Christian, there's certain things I must not do. Certain things I cannot do. But I'm going to continue following after Jesus until we get this right. I really do believe that that's the attitude that God expects of us through his son, Jesus. Anyhow, this has been Minutes with Michael, Outdoors Edition, apparently. Don't expect a tree to grow overnight. Don't expect you to grow overnight. But we should be growing. Give yourself time. Give yourself patience. Give yourself forgiveness, because God gives us all those three things. So let's keep on pursuing after Jesus, and we'll bear fruit in his time. This has been Minutes with Michael, with your host, Michael.